They were just doing the news when they became the news.
On-air ambush.
It continues to get worse.
A deadly shooting. It's unthinkable.
3 innocent people on a deadly collision course with a ticking time bomb.
I said, that's Bryce Williams. It was him. Is he coming to the station to kill us all?
Tonight, we're taking you into the mind of a killer. Bizarre new details from the 23-page suicide note he sent out.
Oh, that note is all for him. It's not for us.
Saying he was a human powder keg just waiting to go boom. And waiting for this. The early shift at WDBJ-TV, Roanoke, Virginia. Popular local personalities, reporter Allison Parker and cameraman Adam Ward. Driving to work while it's still dark, leaving their loved ones.
I said, "Have a great day, honey," and she said, "I will. Good night, sweet boy." And that was the last that I had ever heard from her.
While they're getting ready to go on the air, so is Bryce Williams, a.k.a. Vester Flanagan. He'd been hired there.
Bryce Williams, WDBJ-7.
And fired there.
And in 2 years, he didn't darken our doorstep.
A loose cannon plotting his revenge, desperate for just one more close-up. He got it.
Okay, not sure what happened there. My brain wasn't thinking gunshots.
Neither was the morning producer, whose cameraman fiancé was just gunned down live on air.
The man she was going to marry was shot and killed.
In front of her eyes.
In front of her eyes.
Tonight, we're taking you from the manhunt.
Suspect is believed to be armed and dangerous.
Through his growing madness.
I think of the Vester that I met 10 years ago, and they look like Jekyll and Hyde.
Job by job, to the breaking point.
I noticed him in the rear view of my car. I hope he doesn't have a gun.
He gets all of this attention the last few hours he's alive, and that's what he was looking for.
Could he have been stopped before 2 innocent lives were taken? Good evening. I'm Deborah Roberts. David and Elizabeth are on assignment tonight. For so many of us, like myself, who started out in small TV stations or any kind of small office where everyone is family, this tragedy hits close to home. 15 gunshots turning a workplace into a sort of war zone. But one bit of good news tonight is that one of those victims, Vicki Gardner, is up and talking. Her husband sharing details of that horrific shooting that no one has heard before now. Here's Jim Avila.
Vicki Gardner woke up this morning to her brave new world, a world where she's lucky to be alive, the lone survivor of a gunman's killing spree.
When she came to in the recovery room, the doctor told me that the prognosis is she's going to make a full recovery, minus a kidney and some other small parts.
A tremendously positive prognosis after 2 surgeries on her back and kidney, since Vicki believes the gunman was intent on killing her as well. Yet she told her husband she never saw any of it coming.
There's a bright light in her face, a camera with a light.
Good morning, Allison.
Good morning, Ken.
As the trio was focused on filming their interview, the killer sets his sights on them.
Allison obviously was the initial target. He shot several times.
He then shoots Vicki in the back, standing over her in what could have been her final moments.
So he actually came over to do a coup de grace of some kind.
He missed twice, and then she dove to the ground and curled up in a ball.
This time, the only sound, not explosive gunfire, but the clicks of an apparently jammed gun.
Pulled the trigger several times and only fired once.
With both Allison Parker and Adam Ward dead at her feet, the gunman long gone, Vicki Gardner manages to rise to her feet.
She's one of those individuals that says, if I can get up, I'm going to get up, and she got up and walked to the ambulance.
For Allison Parker and Adam Ward,
but deliver us from evil.
The prayer vigils and makeshift memorials are out front of the WDBJ newsroom. And inside,
Steve Grant, who is an anchor at our sister station, KY.
Colleagues from sister stations in the Midwest have flown in to help as the grief-stricken staff struggles with shock over the loss of 2 colleagues.
We want to pause and reflect, and we want to share with you once again what made these 2 so special, not just to us, but to all of our hometowns that WDBJ-7 serves.
August is typically quiet here in Roanoke, Virginia, full of the gentle sounds of river tubing, not the rapid-fire explosions of gunshots.
This is your hometown news leader.
So we just caught somebody going 69. The speed
24-year-old reporter Allison Parker was there to cover everything from bacon fests and charity events to a recent series on child abuse.
Experts say neglect is a form of child abuse that is just as damaging as physical or sexual abuse.
27-year-old cameraman Adam Ward, a big personality known for his sense of fun, was also a big part of the news family, occasionally turning the camera on himself, like the day he took part in the weather quiz.
All right, what do you think, Adam?
I'm going to go with A. And Adam was correct. High-level winds can rip a hurricane apart.
All right, good job.
He's so happy, you have no idea.
A local boy and avid sports fan, Adam Ward grew up 12 miles away in the rural town of Salem, affectionately known as Virginia's Championship City, where he played football for the Salem Spartans. Both Adam and Allison, full of the radiant energy of journalists just starting out, were paired off by their bosses who saw their potential as a dynamic duo.
They worked together for over a year, day in, day out. As we looked through the pictures and the ones that we showed in our various newscasts, we see all the fun moments they had together.
While growing up in the small town of Martinsville, Virginia, she found the thrill in working on her high school's robotics team, and later even tutored others in calculus.
She was just scratching the surface of her potential. I saw her the first time when I met her, and she left my office, and I said, Allison had that it factor.
Here on the campus of James Madison University, Allison made a big impression at the student newspaper and even interned at WDBJ, the very station she grew up watching.
Don't let the smile fool you. She was a really hard-nosed reporter. Tenacious is the word that I keep coming back to.
Parents were concerned about the principal taking matters into her own hands.
Allison soon got her first job on air at a Newburgh, North Carolina station, even before earning her diploma. Her family was thrilled.
You know, she would always call me and say, hey, Dad, what'd you think of my package today? She did that every single day.
Then last year, Allison came home.
WDBJ7.
To WDBJ, where her well-rounded charisma quickly made her a local fan favorite.
When I was younger, I wanted to either become a doctor or become a pharmacist, but as a journalist, I get to cover those types of fields, so it's close enough.
In this video, produced by the station to introduce Allison to viewers, she talked about a few of her favorite things.
I absolutely love Mexican food, and the spicier, the better.
Yeah, I'm done.
One more bite.
Why?
And it was over some of that spicy Mexican food that Allison found her next great love.
We had our first date. We went to have Mexican food. She loves Mexican food, and we didn't even eat any of it because we were nervous, and every day after that has been pure bliss.
30 seconds. 10, stand by the O10 channel.
Chris Hurst is the main anchor on the station's evening newscast.
We would go to station events and appearances together as reporter and anchor, not as boyfriend and girlfriend, but we couldn't even really hide it there either because we just were so in love.
Soon, they moved in together.
They were so playful, and she'd just take little funny jabs at him, and he'd just take it. You know?
Cameraman Adam Ward also had a serious relationship with colleague Melissa Ott, the morning show producer.
They started dating after they went to the wedding of another coworker, and then obviously just fell in love.
Then last December, Adam dropped to his knee and popped the question. And like any good photojournalist, he made sure the big moment was shared on Facebook for the world to see.
Melissa was talking about her wedding. Happy wedding chat, happy plans.
And in what now feels like cruel irony, this couple was poised to start a new life together in a new town. It just didn't come soon enough.
It was her last newscast. She had taken a job in Charlotte, and Adam was going to go with her, and they were going to start their new lives together down there. It was supposed to be a happy day.
But little do either of these young colleagues know that their fates will soon reconnect with a killer. a former co-worker they've all but forgotten. But he's never forgotten them.
We continue with 2020's tragedy on TV.
Now take a look behind me. As you can see, this is a road to nowhere.
When aspiring to get to network television, local reporters will often tell you their reel is everything.
What kind of music is it and what makes
a compilation of clips that showcase a correspondent's on-air charisma and creativity.
Nicely done.
Investor Flanagan's case, not so much.
A man bit a dog. It happened Friday morning when police went looking for the suspect. He's lucky that dog didn't do a little bit more.
Flanagan had struggled in small TV markets around the country for years, never making his mark in the media.
Investor Flanagan, WTOC News.
But ironically, in those fateful morning hours of Wednesday, Flanagan would produce his own demise and that of two others, like he would one of his news packages, not on TV, but filming it all on his phone, spewing bitterness and frustration on social media.
This is all about you look at me, you respect me, I'm not a bad person, these are bad people, and I got rid of them. Obviously, none of that makes any rational sense. But in his mind, he sort of hit the jackpot of attention getting.
Before it all went so wrong, Flanagan's life seemingly started full of promise here in that other city by the bay, Oakland, California. At Skyline High School, proud home of the Titans, Flanagan was one of those cool kids. His yearbook shows a popular and outgoing student who was voted junior prom court prince.
All the cute girls were hung out with Esther, but he wasn't really dating them. He was the best dressed guy in school, very good looking young man.
It turns out the reason Flanagan didn't like to date girls was because he preferred guys.
Like I told my friend, I was like, well, you know, Esther, I think he might be gay, but I think back then it wasn't the thing to come out as a gay black male.
As shown on his Twitter feed, since an early age, Flanagan's good looks landed him work as a part-time model. But his real dream was to make it big in television news. He majored in broadcast journalism at San Francisco State University and also landed an internship at KPIX TV in San Francisco.
Live in the Eyewitness News,
where he made an impression on former anchor Barbara Rogers.
In the years that I knew him in the early 90s, he was like so many other young people who come through the newsroom, happy to be in the TV station, happy to have his foot in the door on his first job, eager to do a good job.
Flanagan launched his on-air career in relative obscurity in dusty, oil-rich Midland, Texas, where he filed reports for KMID television.
But you know, the next time you're at the convenience store, don't be so quick to give away that spare change in your pocket.
After a brief stint, he moved on to the Spanish moss oak trees and antebellum homes of Savannah, Georgia, reporting for WTOC.
Each year here in Savannah, small businesses pump $1.6 billion.
Everyone was just starting out, so there was a lot of energy, a lot of ambition.
Elaine Reyes was another young, fresh-faced reporter at WTOC who never saw anything sinister lurking behind Flanagan's million-dollar smile.
We're going to go inside and check out the anchoring.
I didn't personally have any issues with him. He was sometimes silly or goofy, as I think maybe we all can be in stressful newsrooms. He seemed like any other young reporter trying to make it in the world.
But there was one thing that seemed to set him apart, she says, a laser-focused ambition to be famous.
He'd go out and shoot his own stories in a three-piece suit. I think it was because he had ambitions for greater things. He wanted to be an anchor. He wanted to move up to a bigger market.
And in 1999, it looked like his ship had finally come in here in the Florida Panhandle, Tallahassee, the Sunshine State's capital. Flanagan landed his promising job with WTWC. Don Schaefer was the news director.
He did a pretty good job. He was a funny guy. He could do good live shots. He could speak and walk and talk, and we actually, you know, he did so well for us, we actually moved him into an anchor slot.
Finally tonight, a day at the beach brings in big bucks for the American Cancer Society.
Flanagan settled into this Tallahassee apartment complex, convinced that his career was about to take off.
I'm Investor Flanagan. Have a good night.
But it was all about to go south. a watershed moment one day when Schaefer says Flanagan showed up for work not in that three-piece suit, but in tights.
There were some questions about whether or not he was gay or not. He had heard some comments over the headphones in the studio when he was anchoring, and some other times where they were making fun of him or making comments about him. You know, zoom in on the gay boy or have him turn his head or something like that. And he really took exception to that.
Schaefer says that was a turning point for Flanagan. All of a sudden, the formerly affable reporter turned on his colleagues, lashing out at any perceived slight. The station's meteorologist, Nancy Dignan, says she was one of the targets of Flanagan's hostility after she told him he made a small mistake during a broadcast.
He used the term on air, opening arguments, and I said, it's opening statements, not opening arguments. He came over and he started pretty quickly yelling at me. And when I say yelling, screaming, you're not my news director, you're not my general manager, and on and on and on. And I was a little intimidated and nervous.
In barely a year, Schaefer says the situation at the station had become intolerable, and he was forced to fire Flanagan. But that wasn't the end of it. Schaefer says Flanagan tried to sue the station for sexual discrimination.
Through our attorneys and through his attorney, we had to tell him that being gay was not a protected class, and he had no grounds to sue over that. So then he quickly changed it to racial discrimination.
In the suit, Flanagan claimed a producer called him a monkey and that other blacks were ridiculed as lazy.
I thought that he was deeply troubled by the comments that had been made to him.
His attorney at the time, Marie Maddox, says she found Flanagan's allegation credible.
He was consistent and consistently told me the same thing that had happened. He appeared to be hurt by what had happened, and in telling the story, I felt that he was genuine in terms of what he represented to me.
I absolutely researched each and every one of those and the people who said they made him, and I couldn't find anything. The GM and I both got involved with that. Corporate sent in some people and checked it out. We did a pretty thorough investigation and didn't really find much evidence of that at all.
In the end, the suit was settled out of court. But with his career in TV now in tatters, Flanagan was on a different path, one of destruction, that would lead him here, to that unsuspecting Roanoke station, WDBJ, and an explosive confrontation.
He slammed his fist down on the table, and he looked at me and threw a wooden cross at me and said, "You're going to need these."
When 2020 continues.
A North Carolina soldier has been killed.
After abruptly getting fired in Tallahassee, Florida, Vester Flanagan was hopscotching TV markets again, this time anchoring at a small station in Greenville, North Carolina.
World leaders are talking oil prices on the Sunday morning talk shows.
Hundreds of miles away from his previous job, where he'd sued his employers for discrimination. But reporter Conji Anthony says Flanagan was not exactly setting Greenville's front porch-friendly audience on fire.
What you can do to fight that?
There were situations where I think he felt a little overwhelmed by the deadlines. I would see him kind of scrambling around the newsroom, sometimes perspiring. I didn't know how long he would last, because I could just see him struggling.
Somehow he survived 2.5 years, a long stay by his own standards, but then Flanagan was on the move again.
You never know what happens to a coworker when they leave the office. You think you know, but maybe you don't. And I thought that he was someone who was just like every one of us.
In fact, Vester disappeared from television altogether for more than 7 years, suddenly reappearing in Roanoke, Virginia in 2012 with a new job and a new name.
Bryce Williams, WDBJ 7.
Seemingly leaving all traces of his problematic past far behind him.
Yeah, pretty good. Nicely done.
We tracked down the man who hired him, former WDBJ news director Dan Dennison.
He was represented by an agent, and typically when you're dealing with agents, they have done some initial vetting of their clients before they offer them to TV stations.
But soon, history would begin to repeat itself.
Early on, there started to be issues reported, conflicts between he and his coworkers. It was one after another.
Echoing his experience in Tallahassee, Bryce Williams began to complain about racial harassment in the Roanoke newsroom. Assistant News Director Greg Baldwin remembers this key moment.
And there was an ice chest sitting out in the newsroom hall, and there was one watermelon that was sitting on the ice chest.
So he took that as some kind of racial slur?
Yes. To him, it was a racial slur, that people were trying to intimidate him.
What is the atmosphere in the newsroom from your point of view about race and sexual orientation?
First of all, I can tell you first-handedly, I'm gay. I'm treated just like everybody else. As far as race, it's never been an issue. You know, we want to make sure our whole station is a good mix of the demographic of Roanoke.
Which should have made it a good fit for Williams, who was both African American and gay. But his frustrations with the station seemed to be mounting.
There was a series of complaints that he was just not behaving in a professional manner.
Williams told management that the photographers were conspiring against him. The photogs were out to get me at WDBJ, wrote Williams in a 23-page note he sent to ABC News. One went to HR after working with me one time. That cameraman he singled out was Adam Ward.
I think there's little doubt that he's paranoid. He, in his mind, thinks that the issues are not his, but theirs.
I first brought you this story last
And here's where they say his and Allison Parker's paths may have crossed. While she's still only an intern, he accused her of making a racist comment when she talked about a friend living on Cotton Hill Road, an actual street in Roanoke.
He had suggested that somehow that was a slur. We didn't think he was mentally unbalanced as much as we thought he had come in with an agenda to find things that he could beat us up with.
He threw a newspaper article on my desk, and it was a newspaper article from Tallahassee that indicated that he had sued his previous, or one of his previous employers for racial discrimination.
It would not be the last time. Williams filed yet another discrimination lawsuit, this time against his new bosses, which would ultimately be dismissed. But not before he was fired in early 2013 and escorted from the station by police, an incident that was filmed by cameraman Adam Ward.
And that's a video that's not been released, and it's not going to be.
And on his way out, Williams made this threat.
He slammed his fist down on the table and threw a wooden cross at me and said, "You're going to need these."
Instead of leaving town, as he had after being fired in Florida, this time Williams stays put in his apartment less than a mile from the TV station. And once again, he changed his name, now calling himself Donald Flanagan.
People who use different names tend to do that because they're uncomfortable with the previous person. And so all of that conflict and issue that he had at one location perhaps will go away using a new name, which obviously is not going to happen.
For the next 2 years, Williams worked for a health insurance company, and ironically, a now defunct risk management firm. But he wasn't done with WDBJ, and somewhere along the way began setting a deadly plan in motion. On June 19th, Williams bought a Glock 9mm gun, citing the massacre at a Charleston, South Carolina church just 2 days before as a catalyst. He writes, "The church shooting was the tipping point." In his note to ABC News, Williams cites other mass shooters from Columbine and Virginia Tech. Sung Wee Cho, that's my boy right there.
Mass shooters are not impulsive shooters. They plan, they figure it out, and whatever day works for them, location-wise, people-wise, etc., they launch.
Last month, Williams dropped off his Mustang at the Roanoke Airport and rented a Chevy sedan. 2 weeks ago, he started a Twitter feed and posted childhood photos with nostalgic captions.
I see the pictures of his face now, and I think of the Vester that I met 10 years ago, and they look like Jekyll and Hyde, just two different people, two absolutely different people.
Underneath it all was a simmering rage. My anger has been building steadily. I've been a human powder keg for a while, just waiting to go boom. And on Wednesday morning, he did just that.
He shot 3 times at my wife.
and then she dove to the ground and curled up in a ball, and that's when he shot her in the back.
When 2020 continues. It's early morning in central Virginia. The sun just beginning to rise, and the community waking up to the local news.
Good morning, everybody. 6 o'clock on this Wednesday. Thanks for waking up with us.
By 6 a.m., field reporter Allison Parker and cameraman Adam Ward were out on location atop the scenic Smith Mountain Lake for a live report about tourism.
PJ7 Mornings, Allison Parker is live in Bedford County to show us how the lake has grown over the years. Good morning, Allison.
Good morning, Kim. It's grown in so many ways through real estate, tourism, and business. I'm here with
6:43 a.m. Parker begins interviewing local official Vicki Gardner.
You told me that a plot started out 50 years ago at about $1,700.
Unbeknownst to them, a predator was lurking. The young journalists, at their most vulnerable state, focused completely on their interview.
The prices were low, but that has changed.
When suddenly, the sound of gunfire captured live and unedited.
We want the people that come here to say that was...
A gunman with a sneak attack, unloading 17 rounds in all, one after another.
Okay, not sure what happened there.
The stunned local anchor, Kimberly McBroom, unsure over what just happened.
And I heard this pow, 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 pow. And it did not register that it was gunshots. It probably should have, but, you know, she's doing a little feature story, so my mind did not immediately go to that worst case scenario. It just didn't.
In the control room, Adam's fiance, a news producer, is watching it all unfold. This freeze frame, caught in the dying cameraman's lens, reveals the shooter's image. We now know that is Bryce Williams, a.k.a. Vester Flanagan. Police quickly arrive at the scene, but the gunman is long gone. Now heading down Hardy Road for about 25 miles to the FedEx, where he faxes to us at ABC News that 23-page manifesto and suicide note. Meanwhile, back at the station.
We are following breaking news this morning out of Franklin County.
The rest of the news team struggles to balance grief and reporting.
Our WDBJ7 morning crew was live this morning at Smith Mountain Lake when shots were fired around 6:45.
What is it like, Kimberly, to be on the other side? That's hard for a journalist. We're
very hard.
Used to being detached.
Yeah. I mean, our job, being a journalist, is hard, and it's so important. But being on the other side is rough.
And then at about 8:45 a.m., this solemn announcement to their viewers.
It is my very, very sad duty to report that Allison and Adam died this morning shortly after 6:45 when the shots rang out.
The 24-year-old reporter Allison Parker and her cameraman 27-year-old Adam Ward killed on the job. The woman they were interviewing, Vicki Gardner, shot in the back and now hospitalized. Desperate and looking for clues, WDBJ staffers replay the video of the incident, investigating that fleeting image of the gunman.
When we saw the freeze frame from Adam's camera, we all looked at it and were like, man, that sure doesn't look like Bryce.
Station management alerts the authorities, who now have a suspect to look for.
Black male, bald head, Vester Lee Flanagan, rolling a gray or silver 2009 Ford Mustang.
But in a seemingly calculated maneuver, he isn't in his car, but rather a rented Chevy Sonic, which is now speeding up Interstate 81. Shortly after 10 a.m., a man claiming to be Bryce Williams called an ABC News staffer in New York and said he shot 2 people, and the police were after him. He hung up, and we called the local authorities immediately.
He let people know who I am, what I have done, and now I'm an important person.
And he was certainly letting the world know everything about him. Remember, just 2 weeks prior, he set up various social media accounts featuring modeling photos and his resume tape. And now, while still being pursued by the police,
Suspect is believed to be armed and dangerous. Use caution.
he took to the internet to air his grievances about the victims, tweeting, Allison made racist comments, and Adam went to HR on me after working with me one time. And even more callous, posting videos of himself shooting his victims on Facebook and Twitter. Bryce Williams had carefully produced his final act.
When you combine social media and live feeds of an actual murder, you've sort of hit the ultimate in getting our attention.
It's 11:20 a.m., and police have finally figured out the correct car.
The vehicle has been confirmed as a silver Chevrolet Sonic 2015.
And Virginia State Trooper Pam Neff is on the side of the road on watch with a secret weapon, a license plate scanner.
It just reads every single license plate that comes through, and it takes a picture of it.
She enters the plate number of the gunman's rental car.
A pop-up automatically came up on my screen that that vehicle just passed my location 3 minutes earlier.
Immediately, Neff speeds down Interstate 66, giving chase.
I don't have time to be scared. I had to do one thing, and that one thing was to stop that vehicle and identify the driver.
But when they try to pull him over, he refuses and careens into the median. A lone trooper approaches, and the gunman takes his own life.
He died at approximately 1:30 p.m. today.
In his getaway car, police discover a wig, sunglasses, a shawl, black hat, and 3 additional license plates, along with a Glock 9mm pistol and 6 magazines of ammunition. Police also raided Bryce Williams' home. These photos giving a peek inside his personal space. It's a bare apartment, no sheets on the bed, dirty dishes in the sink, and most interesting of all, a wall of selfies on the refrigerator. Tonight, the local sheriff says writings found inside the apartment indicate that he was acting alone, but closely identified with the 9/11 hijackers. 24 hours after the shooting, the 3rd victim, Vicki Gardner, awoke from a coma. And according to her husband, Tim Gardner, she's now in good condition.
He shot 3 times at my wife, and she was trying to dodge everything. He missed twice, and then she dove to the ground and curled up in a ball, and that's when he shot her in the back.
Law enforcement officials believe that he staked out the station on Wednesday and followed the victims to the live shot, and the gun he used was purchased legally. Tonight, this tight-knit community and family mourning 2 promising lives cut short.
It's just, the whole thing just crushes my soul. It's affected everybody in this community, and I think everybody across the country. I mean, because she was such a kind and sweet person.
A painful loss, her live-in boyfriend of 9 months, main anchor Chris Hurst, will always remember their final goodbye.
I texted her that I loved her, and to have a good day. And she said, "Good night, sweet boy." It was something that she would say to me, that I was her sweet boy. And she was my queen. And that was the last that I had ever heard from her.
Next, how did Bryce Williams keep slipping through the cracks?
Every single HR person has stayed up at night worried about an employee coming in with a gun.
When Tragedy on TV returns.
The number is staggering. Nearly 2 million Americans reporting that they're victims of workplace violence every year, and more than 1/5 of murders on the job coming from co-workers. So it's the question on everyone's mind tonight. Could Bryce Williams have been stopped somewhere along the way, bouncing from job to job, but always landing another one, and the one that finally and fatally led him to Roanoke?
It's been 3 days since the fatal shooting in Roanoke, Virginia. The spot where the lives of Allison Parker and Adam Ward were cut short, now marked by these new wooden planks. As is often the case after a shooting, there are renewed calls for gun control. But what can an employer do to uncover potential red flags and block someone like Williams from the workplace?
Hiring is a high-stakes game. It always has been. Every single HR person has
stayed up at night worried about an employee coming in with a gun.
Former human resources executive turned career consultant Cynthia Shapiro isn't at all surprised that Williams was able to land job after job despite his poor work record.
There are ways to camouflage it. Employees who have been terminated can, they can take the job off of their resume. They can go by a different name. References can be manipulated. I think companies are running pretty lean. Background checks are expensive. And it doesn't always turn up what you need to know.
In fact, she says most employers routinely disclose as little as possible to avoid potential lawsuits.
What most companies do today is they only give what we call in human resources rank, file, and serial number, which means you're going to get title held, dates of employment, and that's it. It would be really nice if you could say, watch out for this person or what have you, but that opens the company up to a lawsuit. Retaliation really does happen.
That was a concern for current WDBJ General Manager Jeff Marks.
It crosses my mind every time we terminate an employee. It doesn't happen often in our organization. I like to think that we screen well, but we do make mistakes.
Before Williams' arrival at WDBJ, his journalistic career seemed to be in a downward spiral. Remember, he'd been fired and filed a lawsuit against a Tallahassee station where he worked for nearly a year. Don Schaefer was the news director there.
He was confronting people, or he would get in people's faces, where he would get in people's personal space and get up and really confront people.
Have a good night.
There is a fine line between allowing an employee to move on and get another job and learn from a termination and get rehired somewhere, and someone who is a danger.
WDBJ tells us his job application had two names, Vester Flanagan and Bryce Williams.
Bryce Williams, WDBJ 7.
And they checked him out.
So as Bryce Williams, he had a relatively clean history. The job application was going through the HR process, and he was being checked for criminal record and driving record, none of which came back with any glaring issues.
There was a well-respected agent who offered him to us. Typically, when you're dealing with agents, they have done some initial vetting of their clients before they offer them to TV stations.
Dan Dennison, the news director who hired Williams at WDBJ, says the one thing that would have been a clear red flag, that tumultuous time in Tallahassee, was absent from Williams' resume.
As I recall, one of his TV stations, the one that he sued in Florida, I'm not sure he actually put that on his resume.
And Williams held several jobs after that.
He had worked for, I believe, a .com in the Bay Area, and we had contacted them, and they gave him glowing reviews.
But what about that discrimination lawsuit he filed back in Florida?
That wouldn't necessarily come up on a background check. If it didn't go anywhere, if it was settled out of court, or if there wasn't enough to move forward, these things do become public record, but only at a certain point.
Plus, the lawsuit was settled 12 years earlier in a pre-social media world.
There's a lot of information that a potential hiring manager would love to know, but the incentive is to not give it, because companies have to protect themselves.
Every company, including this company, has rules about what you can say about people when they call to check it out. And basically, we are told it's, the amount of time they worked here and when they left.
Do people deserve a second chance? Did he have credentials for what we were hiring him to do? Absolutely. Do we deal with people who have argumentative natures and do great work? Yes. Unfortunately, in this case, he had an argumentative nature and did not do good work.
Though there are laws in place that allow employers to be honest about a past employee, Shapiro says they don't offer enough assurances.
There are a lot of employees who get fired unfairly. Those aren't the ones we're talking about. The ones we're talking about are people who have exhibited behavior that really makes them a potential danger in the workplace. And it would be great if there was some kind of protection for companies to be able to disclose that.
As for the man who hired and fired Bryce Williams at WDBJ, he says workplaces could potentially be made safer if employers would be more transparent.
I do wish that you could get more information from former employers when you're looking at a prospective employee, because it might help save some lives.
For the 2 young lives that were lost, tributes continue to grow. Their names memorialized on signs around town, and prayers for all affected by such a senseless tragedy.
That's our program for tonight. Thanks so much for watching, as our thoughts go out to the WDBJ News family and all those affected. I'm Deborah Roberts for David and Elizabeth and all of us here at 2020. Good night.